Welcome to part 2 of this Q&A session. Had a good time answering the questions in the first session, talking about all sorts of different things from training intensity, talking about data versus effort-based approach, talking about social influences, talking about kind of mindset strategies as well. In this session, I'm going to go through specifically nutrition, cross-training, coming back from injury, like following a plan and the kind of emotions of that, or the emotions of kind of going through your running journey. Some coaching questions in terms of what I've learned since day one. What does a week look like for a coach? The most challenging aspects. And yeah, another fun session planned. And there will be a part 3 of this session as well, because I have that many questions. So you're probably going to get 90 minutes worth of me talking about a variety of topics. I'm going to start with the nutrition questions first and then work through. First up, we have what are the gains associated with taking creatine? Would it be best to take on a run up to race day 1 week before, or constantly taking it? So I guess that's relating to whether you want to take it like all the time versus just for a few doses before a race. I would say take it regularly. Obviously creatine's in food as well, things like red meat, steak is a obvious one. Yes, it's going to help with the higher intensity parts of your training week in terms of whether it's heavy lifting, recovering from that, but also your power output within that, the hill sprint stuff we do, and then the speed work we do. So yes, I would say, and there's a lot of, you can get creatine within certain protein powders as well. So you can get kind of 2 in 1, but yes to that question. Next question around nutrition was about what is the best way to fuel for session days. It's quite a long question. Is it best to eat high carb foods on session days and then not on easy days, or the opposite, so you're already fueled for session days by eating high carb foods on easy days? Right, okay, that's a long question. I think maybe overcomplicating a little bit. What I would say is, if you're a performance-based athlete and you're pushing yourself, and that's everyone in this club, you need to fuel accordingly for that. Fuel for performance, not for, say, dieting, weight management. You're putting a lot of stress through your body, and after inducing a hard stimulus, you need to be able to recover from that. So simple stuff like kind of 20 grams, 25 grams of protein after a hard stimulus, and then kind of 60, 80 grams of carbs within that as well. Do you want to limit carbs? Yeah, I mean, I'm not a massive fan of people limiting their energy intake and limiting carbs before sessions. Yes, there's adaptations towards that in terms of being more efficient at using fat instead of carbs. I would say as you're getting later into the block or a little bit more experienced, then you can go down that road. You know, there's sessions later down the line through as you get more experience called special blocks, where you do a body of work in the morning, don't eat much carbs between, then do a body of work in the evening. That's more advanced, and I don't think that's for everyone. I haven't given that to anyone yet in my coaching journey. I've done it sometimes myself as an athlete, but you have to be fit and you have to be able to take that on, and that's way further down the line. But yeah, I wouldn't say restricting in any department. Yeah, I would be more focused on fueling for performance and not restricting anything. But yeah, you kind of answered the own question there on that. Does it matter what order you eat your food, veg then protein then carbs last, or vice versa, or does it not matter? Yes, I do think it matters. And that order you actually said of veg then protein then carbs is a good way to kind of maintain good energy levels throughout the day and not have these spikes or crashes, which if you're thinking about kind of how you fuel, so you come into a session on a night and how you fuel during the workday, yeah, you want to even that out. You don't want to be crashed by 4 or 5 p.m. and then trying to train hard at 6 p.m. on an empty tank. So yeah, that's really important, and what you have in the build up to a hard session on a night in that order is really important. But that's kind of, I mean, that's how most people eat, I guess, isn't it? I don't know if you actually mean in terms of on the plate, or kind of the order and what timings you have between that. But you can overanalyze these things as well. And switching these little things around, of course, there's performance benefit, but Is it the 99.9% of adaptation that you could get? No, I would say it's in that minority, isn't it? So you don't need to stress about a lot of these things, but yeah, like it does matter. So try to make a conscious effort. Okay, moving on to these are kind of injury and cross training questions, which are relevant to everyone because we all go through an injury at some point, and we all need to use cross training to aid that. First question: what should you expect from your body as you return from injury? Can you push more than typically advised? Suggested if feeling okay and paying less than 3 out of 10, his body knows what to expect and been there before. Okay, I think that what that question means is, right, so returning from injury, you've had an injury. First of all, everyone's injury is slightly different. So what is the injury? How long have you had the injury before you've maybe dealt with the injury? What did you have to do to deal with the injury to make it better? How long has it been better? At what point are you returning from the injury? So are you returning from the injury if it's a niggle and kind of a tendonitis thing? So if it's something that you have to load for it to get better because it is a tendon problem, say, because tendons like work and load up to a certain point, then that's different to, say, a stress fracture where you have to leave it alone, let it rebuild and remodel, and then come back when it's 100%, not 90%. So it really depends on what injury it is. So the most important thing about having any injury or niggle is to learn as much as you can about that injury or problem. That is the key to getting out of that problem. The more you know about your problem, so that's whether that's getting an MRI or an X-ray, seeing a specialist in the certain area where you have a problem, is fundamental to the problem, and I think you should pay whatever the cost of that is if running is important to you. Having been through this process, I've had stress fractures when I was younger, and I've just come back I'm coming back from an injury. I'm still not out of the woods yet, but my process was over a couple of years. So it's tendon related, but it's bone related, and it's a kind of a very unique injury where bone is growing into my Achilles, and then I have to get shaved off. So that process, first of all, my goal was to learn as much as I could about it, but I hadn't met anyone that had a success story from that until maybe half a year ago. All the stories I've heard and all the surgeon advice I'd had was negative, that I shouldn't have the surgery. So it took me getting to meet someone that had the surgery successfully and then finding more about that surgeon in particular and then talking about it to then go through and get the problem really sorted and hit it head on. But that meant me going out there and finding that. So you have to know as much as you can about the injury, then you can deal with it better. Whether that's dealing with it firsthand or how you come back from it and rehab it, that's absolutely vital. But yes, there is no timeline for you coming back. And this stuff like 10% a week in terms of volume and all that stuff is really nonsense, and that's just an arbitrary number that doesn't really make much sense. But every injury is unique, and that's why you need to work with professionals around that injury, whether that's a physio that you know is really good and understands your body, that's a surgeon, that's a coach, podiatrist or whatever, chiropractor, whatever your injury is. Have specialists working on you throughout the whole process of diagnosing it, working through it, whatever intervention that needs to be done, and then the whole rehab process. Don't ditch the physios or whatever else when you think the injury is better. You need to get better from the injury, but then you need to get back to performance standards. In that process, from being pain-free to full performance is sometimes harder than just getting out of the injury. That's kind of what the stage I'm at the moment. So I'll work with a physio that understands my body in the strength and conditioning department and get me back to elite performance on that. And the surgeon advised the recovery process, and then I've kind of had another scan to see if it's been successful and all that stuff. So you have to be proactive and work with it like that. So there are no timelines. And you should always, 3 out of 10 pain, I don't like any pain. I don't like having, I don't think anyone should have pain. I don't think running with pain, living with pain is good for anyone. So I don't really want anyone running with any pain. I don't like 3 out of 10. I want less than that. So your job is to get that down to 0 out of 10. That's your main priority for that question. And as soon as possible, with whatever mechanisms and strategies is needed for that, and whatever professional help is needed for that. Right, moving on to the next question, because I could talk about that for a long time. How do you help your athletes set goals? Okay, transitioning away from injury. I think we'll come back to some injury stuff. How do you help your athletes set goals, whether it's a goal time, distance, or any other type of goal? How do you ensure that short, medium, long-term goals are realistic whilst encouraging people to reach their full potential? Okay, so what that question is saying is different people want to pursue different paths. And sometimes athletes don't always know what they want and what their purpose is. And it's not always about times. So, on social media, it's all about breaking this, breaking that, milestones. But for a lot of runners, it's not necessarily about times. It's about how they feel in themselves. It could be mental health. It could be, the social aspect, running with other people, doing a challenge for distance, not just time. So it's about understanding the person and what is important to them in terms of advising goals, because your job as a coach or mentor is not to tell people what goal they should have, but it's to guide them down a path that you think is best for them based on their interests and passions. So it's about getting the person in tune with what they're passionate about, and if they're passionate about it, they're more likely to stay on course and pursue the goal when it gets difficult. Because we all want to do something amazing, but can we pursue it when it's not going well, when it's difficult, when it's against? If we're not passionate about it, we'll drop it fairly soon. In terms of short and medium and long term, it's a good question, because sometimes if you give people a goal, say in a year's time you want to do this, sometimes people find it hard to get really into it in the next couple of months, because they're thinking, well, I've got a year to do this, I don't need to rush it. So you do always need something to almost force you to do what you need to do. So having that's why people should race. I'm not going to talk about blocks yet, but net blocks are basically, we don't race sometimes, but then we race kind of once a month, twice a month, and it's good to have that regular race or challenge to keep you in tune and what getting you to want more, and to also give you a reward for your training as well. So like if you're just training for months, not doing any races, not showcasing what you're actually capable of, you're getting no reward for your training really, other than maybe how you feel or how you look, and that's sometimes not enough for people. So being realistic on that, I think it's a hard question, because people say to me, so how good do you think I can get, or how fast do you think I can get? And that's like, how long's a piece of string? There are no limits. It's more about, so how much do you want to put into this? That would be my question back to the athlete. How much do you actually want to pursue this? How much does this mean to you? How much are you willing to sacrifice in other areas of your life, say, to pursue this goal? And if you won't, then you won't get there. So it's all about balance with other aspects of your life as well, which other things are important as well. So being realistic is about, I guess, how passionate you are about it. If you're not passionate about it, I probably won't be as ambitious in the goal setting process as someone that is. It could get a bit dark in here, the sun's going down, so I might have to put a light on at some point. Okay, these are kind of about the plan and the program, these next questions. Sometimes you as an athlete, you can feel guilty if you don't do what you set out to do. How to overcome the guilt and not be hard on yourself. So I think what this question is talking about is, if you miss something on a plan, something you set out to do, how do you then move on from that? Okay. There's two sides to this. The first thing is, why did you miss it in the first place? So if it's a major life event or something's major's happened in other aspect of your life, like running is just a small part of your life. So not small, but there's sometimes other things that are more important. Like, do not stress about your running in that moment. If it's because you weren't organised or you couldn't be bothered, then that's something we can change. So that's something you can change in your system to make that better. So if you're trying to do something on a day that really doesn't work for you in the week, say it's a Wednesday, in Wednesdays you work all day, you've got all these things to do, and really you can rarely fit it in anyway, so you get frustrated every week. Well, is that the best day to set that particular activity? Probably not. So you need to change the week around a bit. You need to change your structure around a bit. Or can you change some of the things you do on Wednesday to fit that in so it's not forced and you're not regularly going to miss it? So it's about changing your system around to accommodate that. But if it's the first thing and it's life stuff that's important or out of your control, don't waste time on things you can't change. It's a very important thing. In terms of the guilt factor, I would say for any missed session, bad race, missed race, whatever else, you have 1 hour to stress about it, to beat yourself up, and then after that hour you can't talk about it anymore. There's a simple rule that sorts that one out. And then should you then chase that activity up and put it in the next day on top of all the other stuff? People talk about this catching up miles and stuff like that. No, I don't think you should. I think just move on. Just move on to the next thing. Because then you've messed the whole week up. You know, if you miss Wednesday but then try to put that into Thursday on top of what you already had on Thursday, you've just changed the whole dynamic of Thursday, which then affects Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So move on. Simple as that. Stress about it for 1 hour, then move on. How do you incorporate rest and recovery into your programs? This could be a long answer. So we follow the hard, easy principle, Bill Bauman style. And really linking to yesterday, or the last Q&A that I did, when we train hard or we have a quality session where we're inducing something of a big stimulus, the next day, 2 or 3 days, is about recovering from that stimulus whilst applying a small stimulus that is recoverable. What I mean by that is, we do a hard session, next day is an easy run. It's and nothing else. Try not to add other things onto easy days. So what is the goal of that day? We have a Tuesday, we do a hard session. We do a VO2 max session. So we're tired on Tuesday night. We wake up Wednesday morning. I would ask these questions to an athlete. What's your training readiness that day to train? What's your training readiness to train? So out of 10, 10 being you're really raring to go, 0 being really you want to stay in bed. So it's probably going to be, if you've done Tuesday hard, it's going to be like 6 or under, I would say. And I would only do a hard session if it's 7 or above. But Wednesday we would run easy. And the goal is to bring our training readiness up. In terms of, that's a combination of psychological and how we feel in ourselves, cardiovascular system, muscular system. But relating to the muscular system, how is the muscle tension on Tuesday night? It's very high after the hard session. How is the muscle tension on Wednesday morning? It could be higher. So if you were to walk up the stairs, you kind of shuffle up the stairs because it's hard. You've induced a hard stimulus. Muscles are fatigued, tired and tight. You have that tight, heavy feeling. So we need to bring that muscle tension down. That's the goal of the Wednesday after the hard Tuesday. So that's an easy run. It's like walking. It's like cross training. It's maybe sauna. It's maybe cold plunge. It's all the light stuff with a goal of bringing the muscle tension down and balancing the immune system out with the hard, easy day approach. So then Thursday or Friday, don't always have to do hard, easy, hard, easy, hard, easy. It could be hard, easy, easy, hard, or hard, easy, moderate, easy, hard, whatever. Depends on the person, depends on age, depends on development. But yeah, so bring muscle tension down on easy days. Don't add extra things in like plyos, drills, hill sprints or whatever, so that on the hard day you can then do what you need to do. And it's a much better way to have a more balanced system. You get more adaptation over time, without a doubt. And it's stuff that Bill Bauman talked about in the 70s, and it's stuff Marius Bakken talks about in the 2020s. And yeah, that's how people are training now who are getting the best out of it. So it's about being deliberate with what the goal of that day is. If the goal is to train hard, you train hard. If the goal is to recover, you recover. And I think I said that in the last session as well. So yeah, move on from that. Muscle tension is a very important thing at the club and something that we really work on with everyone. Okay, what's your approach when a runner can't stick to the plan? So that's my approach. Kind of links to the other questions, isn't it? But so I would try to look at the source of that. So not look at them in the moment, but kind of like a third person angle of that. Why is the runner not sticking to the plan? And it's quite easy for me to work out, I'll be honest, because, I can tell by their emotional state week to week. I can tell if they've got something else going on in their life. I can tell how they're finding the training. Are they too fatigued? There's always a reason. And when as a younger coach, I used to always think it was about motivation and they're just not into it. But actually, there's always a reason, there really is always a reason. So it's about having good communication with the athlete and understanding them and them understanding you as well, but kind of getting involved maybe in their life outside of the running aspect. So there's always a reason why someone's not sticking to the plan. And it's about being human to human and working that out and treating them as a person but not an athlete. And you've also got to accept that as a coach, you're also not just a coach, you're a person as well. And that's different. You're two people. You're a coach, but you're a person. And the athlete is a runner, but also a person. And it's not always runner to coach. It can be person to person. That's something that you get better with as you coach further and further down the line. I'm still in the mindset on race day, I need to hit a particular pace each mile. Discussions around this to optimize race and strategy. So that's about race, and it's a bit like the question last time about using data versus effort, isn't it? So if you're always in the mindset of sticking to a pace, yeah, I don't like that. It's funny because, yeah, I think use both. I mean, you can race without a watch. It's very fun to race without a watch. A lot of people can't do it. Does the watch get more out of you than you get out of you? If you didn't have the watch on, would you run slower? I think if it's a very long event and you need to manage the effort, it's a good guide. I think a marathon's quite useful to have a watch, or to even lap the watch at the mile markers, even if it doesn't have GPS. But yeah, shorter distances. I think the aerobic power events, 10k and under, honestly, I don't think you need a watch. And it depends on the racing scenario. Most people who enter a race have a lot of people to work with. So why not just try and beat as many people as possible as a strategy? I think it's a lot more fun than just kind of looking at your watch every 10, 20 seconds to make sure you're on pace. I don't think that's healthy. It's not healthy, is it? So get involved in the race more and ignore the data. That's my strategy. And I know it's controversial, and I'm trying to coach people out of that at the moment, and it's very difficult because the world's all heading data related. I'm going to stick a light on. So that's quite hard to coach that out of people. Probably too bright now. But I see people that don't race without a watch do really well, and they enjoy it more. And they get stuck in more. They maybe 30 seconds over 10k further up the road. But you've got to practice that in training first before you can practice it in a race. I think it's too bright now. How do you get out of that mindset? I think practice it in training. So sometimes practice having an effort-based approach, whether it's in the handicap sessions we do, the time trial stuff we do, thinking about the more intense stuff we do, and just get in tune with your body and work off people and not be too stuck to that watch. Okay, these next few questions are like training related. I'm going to answer this cross training question first and then come back to the last three. We are seeing multidisciplinary athletes like Alex Yee and Georgia Bell really shining running over different distances. Do we utilise cross training enough, and is it underestimated in the running community? I answered this on the Instagram in a very short 60 seconds, but what I would say is yes, the more aerobic volume we can do for endurance athletes who are racing really 1500 metres and above, especially if you're more slow twitch athlete, slow twitch orientated athlete, then yeah, like how many hours of aerobic running or aerobic training do most runners do? It's nowhere near what triathletes do or cyclists do, and we can only do so many hours running in terms of the impact on our joints and our body. But yeah, we can take those hours up to 15, 20, 25, 30 hours of aerobic work total with elliptical and bike and swimming, and you will continue to see progress. But can you fit those 15, 20, 25, 30 hours into your week around everything else you got going on? So that's the more important question. What is productive versus what is recoverable? So if you can do it but you're not recovering from it and you're actually just constantly fatigued, then it's not useful. But then you need to give it time for that stimulus to adapt. So you got to do any change gradually. But yeah, why don't you try bringing in, say, 30 minutes to an hour across a week, or in 1 or 2 sessions of cross training that you enjoy into the week. See how that whole thing feels in terms of how much load it is on you mentally and physically, when balancing it with everything else in your life, and then start to add kind of 10-15 minutes a week to that over time, and see where it goes. So start gradually with it, but do a cross training activity you actually enjoy. That's important, because then you're going to do it long term. If you're just doing an elliptical and you're staring at the wall and you're hating your life, I'm not sure you're going to keep doing that. So I'm not sure it's useful to even add in. Find a cross training activity you like, and then integrate it into your week slowly. But yeah, Alex Yee, Georgia Bell have done well with that, and they're doing very different events. Georgia Bell middle distance, Alex Yee marathon. Shows you how you can work on both. The last couple of questions are more coaching related in terms of what I do. How do you tailor your coaching for runners with different goals, e.g. beginners versus competitive athletes? So yeah, I mean, even in a day, I would see every variety of runner. The club's so diverse in ability, in demographic, and everyone is chasing different goals that are related to their passions. So all the goals are just as important as each other. So I suppose you need to have that principle. How do you tailor your coaching? It's a completely different conversation with each demographic. So you have to be really good at changing the words you use, your demeanor, your philosophy. Really, you shouldn't really have a philosophy. You should have lots of different philosophies, I guess. But yeah, like for example, a Tuesday I could have, like tomorrow, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got 5 different coaching sessions with 2 different groups and 3 different individuals. And one's training for a marathon, one's training for 3K, one's training to kind of complete a half distance. So not really time based. And then the groups are kind of very diverse in terms of what's going on, but everything from 5K to marathon to trail events, from master athletes to junior athletes. So talking to a group who all have different goals is really difficult. Talking to an individual with different goals and then go and coach another individual 90 minutes later, that's a lot easier, because you can just personalize the message and the conversation. But with a group who all have different passions and sometimes don't connect initially, you got to work really hard on that. You've got to try and find the dots that connect everyone, because you want some group chemistry. Sometimes the groups are like a different collection of people from week to week. That's really difficult, and I'm bringing new people in, and then I'm trying to get them used to that. You've got to find what connects them all. They're all connected by getting better. They're all connected by learning more. They're all connected by growing, getting close to the potential, and enjoying the sport and having a good time. So there's lots of things you can connect people with, even if they are very different. And almost like telling each person's story and yeah, everyone's at different stages in their life. So it's almost like a mentorship program in a way. It's some of the group sessions where some of the more experienced older athletes then pass on knowledge and wisdom down to the junior athletes or the newer runners, and you have that nice flow of energy. That's the idea of the network anyway. So yeah, the answer to that question is you shouldn't have a fixed belief, and you should always be evolving and being able to pivot based on that person in front of you. Yeah, it's quite a cool part of the job, and it just makes you a better person as well. What does a week in the life of a running coach look like? Okay, so a week for me at the moment. So at the moment I'm not running loads because I'm coming back from injury, but normally I'm running a lot. So I'm running a lot. I'm doing a couple of sessions a day running wise and maybe some strength work around that. I'm meeting different people, new runners who are coming into the club. I'm doing maybe anywhere from 15 to 20 group or one-to-one sessions a week in person. I'm setting S&C sessions for people to do. I'm then writing plans 20, 35 hours a week, depending on what's going on for the next 2 weeks. So there's a lot of admin and planning. I'm listening to some different podcasts. I'm looking at research studies. I'm learning all the time. And I use what's going on in the week to bring about different themes in my mind and what I learn, and then I link that back to the research, and I link that back to other experiences, and I try and connect dots constantly. I'm dot connector every week, I guess. And then there's all the individual conversations. I might get 80 to 100 messages a day relating to training, problems. There's maybe some welfare issues each week as well. Running a club, you've got a big dynamic of people. You're thinking about new ideas. You're setting training camps up. We're setting a talk up in May, like a conference on performance. Training weekend in June. Fontenay Altitude Camp in August. Warm weather training camp, Portugal in November. We're working with other people who are kind of doing some videography and photography for us. So we're setting up those training days. It's constant, and yeah, I'm not sure if I didn't love it, I couldn't do it because it's not necessarily a job, but a passion. And we're trying to really make a difference to the area and what the opportunities available for people, and to correct people who are really broken off course, not reaching the potential. And yeah, it hurts me to see a lot of people not reaching the potential in the region, and people who are getting mistreated and misguided. So it makes me even more passionate. And yeah, I'm mentoring, I guess, already, really, new coaches who are younger coaches who then want to come through it and work as well, so we can cover a bigger scale and have more of an impact, which presents a new challenge. And then, yeah, I've got to manage my own athletics, rehabbing from this injury, which has been very difficult, and getting back to top performance again, to elite starts and going beyond where I was a couple of years ago. So there's a lot to that. And you have to be organised and you have to plan the week out very good. A lot of micro stuff and a lot of macro stuff. And I like the balance. So you kind of have this structure side of your brain, a bit like left brain, right brain, for people that know what I'm talking about. But you have the structure side, setting up the week, getting people together, setting up these networks, setting up the groups, setting up people to work together, setting up your diary to meet people, setting the sessions up, what works. And then there's the creative side. New things, new initiatives, new camps, new ideas, new thoughts on training, and you've got to kind of mix between them. So you got to be both on that. Okay, last couple of questions. What's the most challenging aspect of being a running coach? The most challenging aspect about being a running coach is when you see the path that people need to take, but they can't see it yet. Yeah, that is a younger coach, even a few months ago, I guess, but that's hard to get your head around. Because it seems really straightforward, sitting here writing it and all these plans and talking to people. Like, I know what people need to do. It's about conveying the right message and inspiring people and setting people on the right road and keeping them on the road for them to get there. Often I want it more than the athlete, I think, in a lot of cases. Seeing people doubt themselves and not believe in themselves really frustrates me for them. So I've seen a lot of change in that in the last 5 years with people. And I'm talking about social media and artificial intelligence relating to that, and how people treat each other. So I'm a big believer in people helping each other, and not being selfish in the sport. And there are a lot of selfish runners out there. That's why I'm a big believer in the team aspect. And it is hard to make a team around people who all come from different backgrounds. So I do get frustrated with that sometimes. The progress and the transformations and the relationships with people, and that does outweigh the challenging aspects at the moment. Sometimes the challenging aspects take over and it's darker than it is light. So managing your own emotional well-being is very difficult as a coach, because there's always work you can do, and often, I don't know, I mean, I'm talking about the industry here, but there's not really much protection for coaches as well, and it's not seen as really a professional job yet. So maybe us younger coaches are maybe going to bring about that change in the next decade or so, but there's a big disconnection between the national governing body and coaches and athletes and the whole industry as a whole, really, and lots of different ideas and politics involved with it. I want to make runners better and happier and, get more out of it. That's where I'm at. So you do have to work on that aspect as well. But yeah, talking about positive stuff. What have you learned from coaching that changed your approach? So that's maybe a question, is what's changed over the 8 years that I've been coaching since I started. I always thought at the beginning it was an information problem with everyone, and I just needed to provide the information and everyone would do great, and I realised that wasn't the case. And it's about making people believe in themselves and see the path, I guess, like the last question, I guess, from the challenges. But you know what everyone needs to do. It's about getting them to believe in that. And yeah, it's not just about giving the information. It's about how you get it across. So that's quite a big thing. Sometimes you can help people and they take and don't really appreciate it. But then I guess it is a business as well. But it's kind of a human. It's quite a close connection. So then it's not like a product, is it, or a service in essence. It's very human. So you kind of expect to like have good connections with people, but sometimes people take the information, the advice, and get what they want and then really don't say anything and leave or whatever. That's happened quite a lot. But then you can't be negative about that. You can't control that. So you have helped those people. Yes, maybe they didn't appreciate it, but like you've still done something good. So you have to move on and focus on the positives. But that's going to happen over and over again, unfortunately, because some people do see it as just simply a service and not the human aspect. I suppose these last few questions are a little bit about the emotional side of coaching. And as I said, there's not really much support around that. Or like a coach's kind of, coaches don't really interact that much. There's only a couple really of us that do. It's it's quite a competitive thing, isn't it? And I think there's quite a lot of like between clubs and groups and teams. It's quite competitive and me versus you attitude, rather than what can we all achieve together. What can we put our resources together and and move like the region forward. But that's not really how it works at the moment. So it'd be nice to see that change. But yeah, I suppose what I've learned is there's a lot of politics in it, and there's a lot of cliques in the running community. I know why these cliques form, and I think I know how to tackle that in a more positive way now. But I did struggle with that when I was younger. I always used to fight it, because it frustrated me that was getting in the way of people's performance and emotional health. But now I know why they form, and so I kind of work with that better. So yeah, learn a hell of a lot, and there's a lot more to learn. We never stop learning. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there for that part 2. Some deep questions on that one, and I've waffled a bit at the end, but some questions were straightforward, some really thought-provoking ones, and I look forward to the third part, which is going to explore maybe some of the sciencey side, looking at them, a little bit more down the rabbit hole maybe. So thank you, and until the next one.